Yeah. So they might get them.
Got some videos of others that we should show you. They're lovely. Yeah. How does it now be?
I think the recording started.
Have we started?
Yeah.
Yes, it's showing up as recording.
So we have to be sworn at old school. Honestly, I've never got a
Okay. Okay, okay, are you okay, class? No, oh, there's kids there, so I'm sorry, I just think it's like school. Right, and we're going to go to the formal meeting now, but it doesn't have to be too formal. And I'm really delighted to see that committee members are here, Councillor Colette, you have sent an apology, so Naz, over to you, just.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Collett.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to do the urgent business.
We haven't got there, have we got any urgent business? I don't think so, so we'll take that off. Any declarations? Yeah. We've got the minutes from the previous meeting, 3rd of October. Has anybody got anything they want to raise from the minutes, either accuracy or actions? Councillor Rising.
So with the inviting CAMS to a future meeting, are we doing that? Have we done that?
The plan is to do that, and we'll come back to you with some things or negotiate that 3 minutes.
Okay, and the other one was just the update from Lynn, who's here, so just on whether the situation is stabilised. I'm reading from the minute about the designated doctor and the things you updated us on previously.
Yeah, so we have a new named doctor who started in December. And I believe that a designated doctor is going to be starting as well, but that's going to be like a fixed term. I'm not sure, I haven't got a date for that yet. Having the named doctor already is making a huge difference to me, because you need somebody to, I'm not a doctor, I know I've been trying to fill the role for a long time, but you need a doctor, so that's brilliant news. And whilst we stabilise the review health assessments, we had the problem with the backlog. We still have a slight backlog because we've got a lot of sickness in the team. We have somebody in long-term sickness. And when you have a small team of 4 nurses and somebody's off sick, and then you've got the others that need to go on holiday. We've secured money to pay for extra health assessments to be done. So we're employing other people to try and meet our targets. So I'm hoping by the end of March we reach our target. That's good. But by the 31st of March we need to get, for the young people as well, they need to have assessments on either 6 monthly or annually, but by March we think it to be what it normally is.
Oh, that's a good news.
Yes, it's the, I've said before, it's the worst year I've had since I've been in post for the fall. Yeah, and the initials and having the designated doctors already making a difference.
That's good news.
So yeah, which we still aren't there, but we're working towards it.
Yeah. Lynn, would it be helpful if we had a regular report at this meeting
Yes.
as to where the initials and review
Yeah,
are? Richard reports on dental and broad health
yeah,
assessments.
that would be really useful, and especially could I have a reminder for the date it has to be in? If I could send a reminder that you need it by this day, then I'll definitely, because I supply it for the NCL, so it's the same data.
Yeah.
It's just that you
Yeah,
can
that
have a
would
copy
be
of
really
it.
useful. We just
Yeah.
have it as a standing item, shall we?
Yeah,
That would be good.
And there might be some other information you think we might find helpful, like
Sure.
such as take up of immunisations.
yeah.
Yeah. We can have a discussion outside as to that would be
Yeah.
good. If you're doing it for another
Yeah.
place,
Yeah.
it's collected.
So shall we agree, a standing item?
Yeah.
With all the aspects of the service that's provided through the designated doctor and designated children care health team,
Yes.
and that we just receive that report and then we can interrogate it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when it will go out with the minutes, I get the request.
Yeah.
What date it's needed by,
Oh,
with the agenda.
And okay?
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
You might want to extend an invitation to the new doctor.
I do think about that.
Yes.
Shall we invite the new doctor to meet the committee?
Well, actually, should they not be a member of the panel?
The designate doctor will be when they.
Oh, right,
start.
okay.
But it would be really good because the named doctor is the one that's doing the clinical work.
Oh, right, yeah.
So I think it's quite important. You've met her online. Yeah.
So shall
Yes.
we invite named, so we've got the named doctor and the designated
Yeah.
doctor, they're two different things.
Previously, Verusa's post was joint, and then they decided to split it.
Oh, right.
And Royal College wanted it split, so there wasn't a conflict to have one person doing both roles.
Oh,
And there's going to be lots of different areas, so that's why it's been split.
So we'll invite the named doctor
Yeah,
to
and
the
then
meeting.
when the designate starts, they'll be invited to every meeting.
Every meeting.
I imagine that's what we're
Okay.
going to continue.
So can we
And just
record
to be-
that?
Yeah.
Sure, Lynn, in your role, sorry, Kath.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Will you continue to attend?
yes.
Lovely,
Yeah.
lovely.
There'll be more people at meeting. Okay, so that's excellent. Anything else anyone wants to raise? We're going to be talking about the Champions programme in this meeting, so we won't ask any questions on that in the matters arising, because it really is in the body of the meeting, not in the agenda. Anything else?
There is just, Lynn, if you don't mind, you know, like we spoke about what other information is available. So perhaps we can extend it to CAMS if possible and other areas so that we get a regular report here. But if we discuss outside the art of the possible,
Yeah.
yeah, because I know you'll have access to some, but you might not have access to all. But maybe through you and the designated and the named doctor, we might be able to get a wider, set of data, because I think it would be helpful for us to know about the health of our
Yeah.
children and young people.
Yeah.
Okay. We've done that, so can we agree with those agreements, can we, no.
I think so, just want to run by you, Councillor Brabazon. I think that when the name doctor returns and comes before the board, that at the same time we should ask for the first steps from the tax doctor.
Yeah.
And our colleagues from the banks.
Yeah.
The supply that we will warm up after this meeting to return with his data. Our children looked after, and perhaps he could do a report, so we can focus on the health needs.
Lovely. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
So on that, I think that's definitely what we've talked about previously, and I agree that's a really good idea. Is it possible to get some info, if we're going to have a sort of themed or focused meeting, could we have some feedback from our young people then about their experiences of CAMS and other things? Because what my anxiety would be is that CAMS would turn up with the best will in the world and will want to give us an optimistic interpretation of their services, and that's understandable, but it might not be the experience of our young people, and I think it would be useful for us as a committee to have all sides of that.
Yeah.
So we'll speak to Jude and
Great.
Stephen
Yeah.
and Sarah
Yeah.
and ask them to do to cover the child's perspective. And that fits very well with the Champions model.
Yeah.
There is a champion that we want to assign to the health and wellbeing.
So just so that I'm clear, if the young, so we'll do some sort of survey.
Yeah.
So we get wide range.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if somebody wants to, because
I don't mean
would be
necessarily
would be
having
delicate
people
and
ask me to
sensitive.
do that,
Yeah.
But I just mean
Yeah.
that we've got a sense of the experience of
Absolutely. Yeah.
young people. I wouldn't
No.
for a second want to put either the young people or CAMS in the position of sort of being sat across
Yeah.
a table from each other in
Yeah.
what could be an uncomfortable
Absolutely,
situation. So
absolutely,
I
yeah.
can make it uncomfortable enough for CAMS. If we need to. So, yeah.
And I think the voluntary sector, because we got very young people go to Open Door as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we need to make sure if we're going to put out a questionnaire that we're asking whereabouts they're living, because each CAMS service is.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to give them a hard time if it's not even their service.
I don't know.
Can I suggest that when we move on, after we've heard about performance and we move towards the issue about the champions, that we hold the idea about the thematic meeting for the committee linked to some of those big themes, because if we, for example, looking at CAMS, if young people are going to Open Door, would we want Open Door with us as well, because they're over the country, aren't they, Open Door?
But, well,
No, we haven't been crouching.
yeah, that's the one that we
Yeah,
use. I don't know.
yeah, there's national.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're
because
just,
there's
they're
Wales
just this
visited.
borough, I believe.
Sorry?
They're just our borough, I believe. They've got one that covers Tottenham and the east side and one that's in Crouch End.
Right, but I think they have open doors.
They do have them in other authorities, because I had them in my last one, so.
Right.
Do they?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, I think it is a more national thing, but I'm just thinking in terms of where, if I'm getting counselling or getting all of that, that we might have a broader look and see what the experience is, and I think the suggestion of inviting people's views and experiences first class. Okay, so are we now finally agreeing the minutes? If we are, right, minutes are now agreed, Naz, and we'll move on to item 6, which is performance. I think that's you.
Yeah, do you want me to go through the highlights of the report?
Yes, please.
So starting with the numbers then, at the end of September, that we had 372 in care, end of November, it's gone up to 380, today it's 386. This is a rate of in the low 60s per 10,000 people, which is where we think it should be. Our statistical neighbours vary between 60 and 69, now it's 63-ish. So that's very much a borough like ours, what is expected, so it's not unusual. Number of unaccompanied asylum seeking children, we're back up to 25 as of today. We had one new one since Christmas. So again, this is now quite a long way below our increased threshold through the National Transfer Scheme. They put that up from 42 to 59 as our quota, but we're still short of that following COVID and Brexit and things, but it's not really going up quickly, just going up by 1 or 2 over a period of a quarter probably, so just creeping up slowly. In terms of the churn of looked after children, this is showing a slight downward trend, so more stability. We haven't got as many children being looked after for a short period of time. So we've got fewer starters and fewer leavers, which gives us the overall balanced picture. And in terms of the number of under threes, this is showing an increase over a long time. From March 2020, before COVID, we had 49, and today we've got 62. So it is creeping up slowly. Talked quite a lot last time about the increase in family and acute stress, and there was a little action taken on this where they did some research, looked at individual companies, finding as well, audit done on the cases, and the findings were quite interesting. It's hard to articulate them into numbers on it, but basically what's happening was they found out that most of the cases, if you looked at a different light, could be categorised as something else. But more interestingly, most of the cases were where another sibling had another category of need. And what happens was tend to be a family comes in there, and the lead sibling gets given one, and the others look like they've been given family and acute stress as a result of the other one. And in fact, they all should have been on the original category, sort of, because that was the core cause of the problem for the family. So it's a slightly different way of looking at it. This has been addressed. Mash have had some meetings around it and some, I'm not going to say training, but information sharing. So they might be looking at things with a slightly different lens going forwards.
Can I ask a quick question on that? Then?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Do you want to, I was going to say, do you want to ask questions as we go along, or wait to the end of the report? How easy about which way? Which do you prefer? Are you happy to do it as we go along? Okay.
So on that one, because that was really interesting, so does that mean then that we're less out of line with our statistical neighbours really on that
Yeah.
one?
Yes.
Because when you look at the graph, like we're way out of line
Yeah.
compared to the others. So, you know, it was interesting to have the background. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. It really helped to understand. I'm glad we had that conversation last time, because now we can be, I guess, a bit less worried about it, because like it was suggesting there's so much stress in our population compared to everywhere else. So it's really helpful. So yeah, that's good to know. So thanks.
Lucy, you had your hand.
Yeah, so I've got a question on page 7, so 2.2. So it's more for the unaccompanied asylum seekers, children.
Hmm.
So I know in the past, normally the council does try to help them to gain residency in the country. And I'm just wondering how many people are nearing the age of 18 whereby they will no longer be under the control of the council, and are they being helped to now get settled status? And how does that work with those?
That, I mean, Sally's on the line, but it continues to be, we are their corporate parents. We don't pack them off at 18 years old. We continue under their care leavers' rights and the benefits they're entitled to continue to support them. So we made a decision in 2019 that any looked after child, that we would put a lot of time and energy to work with the Home Office to get their leave to remain regularised. And that doesn't stop unaccompanied asylum seekers. Sadly, there are some that lose confidence nationally as well as in Harrogate in the system when there are delays with the Home Office response. And so they take matters into their hands. So our data tells us that that number is very, very few, less than 2 that we've had in over 2 years that just disappear from the radar. But generally, all of our looked after children, unaccompanied, are not treated any differently. We are supporting them as best as we can, and Sally's nodding, to have their leave to remain in place.
Okay, that's good to know. So maybe before they were thinking of starting it earlier, the process, but that's good to know that you don't just.
We don't treat them any differently.
Okay.
Our children.
I was going to ask a question if I might, also about the unaccompanied asylum seekers. So the new child has come. What's the age range of the young people who are looking after
So the average age range
of the unaccompanied?
of newly arrivals we found range between 15 and generally they come in say 15, 16 because
Right.
sadly that's the way those supporting them to come to the country help tell them what they've got to do, and of course they must, because the Children Act still says they're only children until their 18th birthday. So the system sets it up for that dialogue to happen. Well, we do then have an obligation, if the Home Office say, well, we think you're older, to do age assessments. And normally we settle within the 2 years parameter that we have to not take matters forward. So generally, the one that came to care is 15.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks from 16, wasn't it? Turned 16 first January.
Yeah, but generally they come in and they start with Keith and Haley's service, and then they move over to Sally's.
Are these, I have a couple more questions if I might. So are they, it's quite difficult to place the 16-year-old young person to start unaccompanied asylum seeker?
If Sandy Bansell was here, she's our service manager for fostering. We have some really dedicated foster carers who came from a refugee background themselves. So there's 2 particularly that come to mind for me, and they are always wanting to take to be the point of contact as long as it's safe to do so. So there are sometimes where it's not safe to place them in a foster care.
That's really my question. Yeah. Any more questions, or we should get Richard to carry on back to page, we're on page 8. Page 2.9, page 9. Right. Yeah.
So it's saying 6 children have been adopted in the past 6 months. That number's gone up now. In the last 12 months has been 10. So it's a big improvement on the previous year. So that's a good outcome so far. In terms of up-to-date care plans, this is good. We're at 80%, which is up from the 70% the last quarter was repeated. Still short of the 90% target. Pathway plans for the older children, not quite such good news. We're struggling there to get above the mid-60s percentage of that at the moment. And it is, and I've been struggling because we are putting a lot of effort into it, but it's hard.
Just to come in there, Richard, we recognise that we are struggling with it.
Yeah.
And we've been looking at the quality as well as what the care plans or public plans are addressing. So I think as part of the actions around that, we're going to be doing some performance areas to support practitioners around some of the blocks around pathway planning. Because as everyone knows, it's the transition into the young people, and it's a significant part of us to get it right, for it to be timely and for it to meet the needs of our young people. So we don't have a specific focus, and we're not actually addressing that through weekly meetings, through performance surveys moving forward, and through weekly oversight from myself and Hayley.
It's not just a plan, it's an assessment, so I think it's quite a big document
Mm.
that social workers deal with them.
Some of the issues around the pathway plan itself it's a long document, it's quite a big work that's starting in. And I think some of the issues will need to be looked at for liquid logic transfer over, because in some local authorities you've got pathway plans where you do a needs assessment and then a pathway plan. And our document currently is just one long comprehensive document, which may be off-putting to get it completed in the first instance.
So is it a standard national document, or we got our own Haringey version?
So there are the pathway plan regs set out the key areas that we have to do this pathway, that we have to assess every 6 months. And some young people find that challenging. And each local authority has the liberty to tailor to what they feel is right for their service. But I think through the performance surgery, we're going to get really close to what some of the challenges have been, not just for the practitioners, but for the young people who've got to participate, and indeed for some of the partners who've got to contribute to the pathway plans. So typically, if you think of a child and family assessment, that's annually. So again, it's half the size of a pathway plan.
That's quite a challenge.
Yeah.
And also a time when people are making transitions as they grow up. Young adults.
Yeah. So you can imagine the kind of conversations and trying to sit a 17-year-old down to go through the pathway plan, and you're asking questions, what do you feel, and it can be demanding, but that's not an excuse, it's an explanation, and I'm 100% behind the services plan to launch the performance surgeries.
Yeah.
Might be quite interesting to have perhaps a brief report about that as an item when we come back, meet the course of the, over the year. Not immediate, but there's obviously a really big thing. Sorry.
I think Anne had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Anne.
Just to say that we absolutely can improve our performance, because in years past it's been higher than it is now. So we need to do all the things we need to get it back there. So we will continue to work on it, because we want it to be better than
That's
this.
not our practice.
It's not our practice standard. We know this isn't, I'm trying to avoid saying this isn't good enough, but actually it's not good enough. We want it to be better, it's easy to say it's not good enough. And we know that, and so we'll continue working on it, yeah.
And then Felicia and Ellie, you want to say
Felicia
something?
first, you before me. So, you answered my question about the pathway. I asked them about the plans after that, so that's good. But we're looking at
Can I ask on pathway plans
Okay.
then, because then it's
Yeah.
on the same thing.
Okay.
Could we see a pathway plan?
That's what I was.
Because I get this, a long onerous document, but I'd like to see it, because if you're employed to do it, you're employed to do it. And I know that's kind of easier said than done. I'm taking on board everything that you said, Bev. I completely understand how difficult it will be to work with young people and they're confronting questions. But, there's long and long, and there's, I'd just like to get a sense of what we're actually talking
I
about.
think it will be helpful.
Yeah.
Be populated, but we will share.
Oh, anonymised, whatever. I'm not asking for individual details.
No,
of
if we,
case,
I
but just
would say that, talk about seeing one, if
Yeah.
there was a report about how we're doing and we just have it as an attachment, as an appendix.
Yes.
And when you put it into the context of the workers going out and seeing the young person, they could go out 3 times before they actually get all the information they need for the report, because it's about how long that young person's willing to sit and engage.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's just written by the worker and it's meaningless.
Yeah.
So,
and then of course, the young people, are they there with the foster carers?
yeah, some of them depend on where they're living, because obviously it's 16 plus, isn't it? So some of them
Yeah.
are semi-independent.
So our young people who are with foster carers are not, because our foster carers are very skilled in bringing their influence to bear. And also helping to get the information to populate. So that's not the cohort that we have the challenges with.
Right,
It's the cohort that don't live in the local authority,
Right.
who are saying in semi-independence, where there are issues, they came into care late. And so sitting with someone and talking about what you want, your aspirations, requires a different skill. It's not just an administrative task. and also the social workers having to type up the dissertation at the end of all of that is the challenge. And then sadly, we've had some staff and staff workforce challenges over the last, I would say, year and a bit. I think that Keith and Haley have done a really good job to now get our staffing complement back up to what is expected to do. This surgery is setting our standards, reset, I think we'll start seeing.
Ahmed and then Anne, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, just on the pathway plan as well. How I'm guessing the document is written, but is there any way of doing it? For example, I find it quite hard to write quite long, a lot of questions and a lot of things, but it's much easier for me to speak into a camera and then have it transcribed. Is there a possibility of that happening just for no?
You can do it on Word.
Yeah, you
You can change
You can-
it, so the young people can do that, but see, it's only, the data
Yeah.
only counts when we put it on Mosaic and it's authorised. So as much as I might get a dictation into a Word document, the job of the worker is to convert it from that into we can cut paste it. And so there are ways around it, but each step will take some time.
That's actually a creative way of
Yeah.
moving, because you could use what used to be called dragon, didn't it? Which was voice.
Yeah.
In Word itself, you can dictate into a Word document.
Yeah.
We could do that straight into Mosaic.
Yeah.
Must be a way to. It's we've moved so much into
We'll
this.
take it away and have a check with
Yeah.
the digital services and come back with an action.
Because lots of stuff is done that way now, like a lot, so like lots of feedback on assessed work in universities and stuff, so.
Or for not to be transcribed. I mean, I know.
So nothing.
Hopefully Liquid Logic can do that.
Yeah, I think it's more adaptable.
It's more interactive, yeah.
As long as they can take their laptops out with them.
Yeah. I was going to say, Councillor Brabazon, that some of the ones I've seen are, and I haven't seen them for a while, it was a couple of years ago, but they weren't simply just forms that were completed. They were sort of almost works of art because people have sat down with the young people. They're almost like vision boards about their path, so that takes a lot of time really, and it's more focused on getting that qualitative piece of work. I don't know if the team still does that, but yeah. And so it's that balance, isn't it, about the quality and getting the engagement as well as the numbers up,
And it's written very much, it's their plan. So
Yeah.
It's about them.
Covers their education, aspirations, housing.
I think
That's
I've 14 different sections on there, is there? I think something like that. It's huge.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting to have a bigger discussion about that actually, because this is the age when we really worried.
Yeah,
This is the critical age.
So I've got the question, are we,
Felicia.
everyone's done the pathway plans? Yeah, okay, mine's on adoption, so 2.9. It's just wondering, do you know the ages of the children that were adopted? And then were some of them adopted as siblings, or were they like single individuals?
Yeah, so we are large consumers of the regional adoption agency. And some of you were involved in the conversation moving us to regional adoption agency. And so the breakdown, of the children who were adopted largely, we're talking about children under 18 months. And then the older children in sibling groups. As best as we can, we do try, and I might come back with a specific note on looking at the data for the last 2 years and showing you what that looks like. But the older the children get in sibling groups, the challenge is, particularly in this current climate, to find adoptive parents will take sibling for 2. And so there's some very difficult and sad decisions sometimes we have to make to increase the prospect of adoption. And work with the circle of adoptive parents to ensure that they maintain their sibling relationships where possible.
One woman with the because it was twins.
Oh, yes, the twins,
Yeah.
But they were young, they were young, so that's.
I did have a question. Has anyone else got a question before we move on to the next bit? I was actually going back to the to paragraph 2.5, and it was really about whether you have any, I don't know, some sort of evidence or insight into this increase? You think it's to do with the cost of living or stress or what?
I mean, this particular data set, I don't think, we would typically not take children into care because their families were stressed financially. That typically just would not happen. There would have to be aggravating risk concerns in the family. And so I'd like to hands on heart say there are no children in care because their parents can't afford. They can't deal with the cost of living crisis. And there was blessed in William Harringay, if I use that word, because there was an extensive program that really tries to give a lot of support to families once they're identified. Our challenge is with families with no footprint of Harringay involvement who may come in from another local authority and have only to set the acuity of the need is chronic and they come in for neglect. Under the reunification processes that we follow, we try and address that. But it's as far as the chain of impact, because they're going so.
So these families who are coming into Harringay, is that linked to families coming through temporary?
Yes, largely the private rented sector.
Yeah. So families have been located here and they become house hospitals.
Well, the need is in our area.
Needs of the
They
borough.
haven't got permanent residents.
That's what I mean. So the housing may have come from another borough, but they are in the borough.
I used to get very cross about it, Councillor Representative, but then I realised we are exporters.
To say that, I was going to make that point, but nevertheless, they're not known, and then they are known, and it's making sure we've got systems in place when that happens.
And we have got good systems, so we've come a long way in our journey as to how we support families who the legislation still deems them intentionally homeless. It's not a phrase I like, but that's the legislation. And no recourse to public funds. So our service is very well established. There hasn't been a complaint or a whisper in 2 years from that end of the business. It's very efficient, it runs smoothly, and they've just taken over, by and large, the support to the Ukraine families as a result of the systems that are in place. So I'm pleased with that. That's where we catch them. And we work really hard on it. We take the credit for, but it's really other officers who work really hard to link them into services and to have the Clue conversation with the Home Office. And I refer to Clue because Clue was the judgment that said the Home Office needs to do things differently if they know that children are open to children's social care and you need to recognise their parents leave to remain.
That's very helpful. Do you want to go on, Richard?
Yes.
Back to you.
And moved on to some better news then. On the personal education plans, we reached the end of the summer term, it was 93%, which is incredibly high, not any class for anybody, I think. And at Christmas, we got back up again to 92%, which really halfway through the year is really good as well. Visits at 78% is okay, I suppose. We're still pushing this hard along with the care plans and the pathway plans, all fits into the same performance network and the working there. Stability of placements, 12% with 3 or more placements is high for us, but it's not exceptional. It's still within the bounds of normality. And the other half of that is, of course, children being in the same placement for more than 2 years. Those who've been in care for 2.5 years, been in the same placement for 2 years. And for this, we've got 74% of those children still there, which again is slightly down from what we have been historically, but it's still very good compared with our neighbours and London averages. Health assessments up to date. I know we talked about initial health assessments a bit before. Better news on the overall health assessments, where we're up to 96%. Statistical neighbours, and this is 92% of children up for health assessment. Again, this is children being in care for long enough to be realistic expectation. So moving on to our favourite subject now, dental checks. Okay, last time it was 63%, now it's 75%. So I would say that's positive.
Yeah. It's
Well,
about-
it's still not
No, it's not good enough. It's not good
Yeah.
enough.
It was better than past
Better than-
COVID
yeah.
days and the
Yeah.
40.
Giving us a bit
It's
of
a
that
bit-
dentistry.
Yeah.
But so the ones that do refuse to go. And if you can do that.
If all changes to mosaic and suggestions, as this case earlier on, we are shifting to liquid logic.
Yeah.
Steve, very soon, it's actually not till October,
Mm.
but there's a lot of preparation now and all the new workflows have already been written and already in place. So changes like that need to be.
I'll talk from them the next meeting.
But just to say, just with that, dental is really important for our children care and something that we are continually going to drive, get the performance up to 90%, as far as I'm concerned, because every child needs a dentist contributing to the priority. That's something that we're working on.
It's something sets you up for life and soon.
Before we go on to care leavers, can I just say, I mean, on the, sorry, I know the boat's jumping back slightly, sorry, Zena and
It's okay, no problem.
on the sort of the care plan and pathway plans and the visits, could we, I think I would find it helpful at least to have just some explanation under this, because if, so on the pathway plans figure, for example, so 64% looks terrible, let's face that. But if we know that for those young people and children living, or young people living in the borough, it's much, much higher than that. And we know that it's more difficult where young people are living out of borough or they're in different types of accommodation. An explanation like that would help me to understand it, I think, because if the picture is very different for those young people who are living in borough, then that gives us more context and it helps. And on a side note, I'm confident you'll get there because we used to hear the same things about the PEPs. And now they're at 92%. I'm confident that you'll get there, but I think some of that further information will be really helpful just to give us that context of when we're reading the report to start with. I know it's a bit more work, but yeah, sorry, that was
That's
it.
great.
Before we move
No.
on.
I mean, it's good context for everybody, isn't it?
So moving on now to Sally's part of the world, the care leaving service, we're up to 436 young people being looked after now. So this is the 18 to 25-year-olds. And for the 17 and 18-year-olds within this, the care leaver service, we're in touch with 100% of them. It doesn't often happen. We went to 5.5, I'm rounding it up. Part of the children. So that's really good news. That's exceptional. And the EAT, we're up back to 57%, which is where we were for COVID and employment, education and training. So this is looking really good now. And the accommodation is very high, suitable accommodation for both age groups, 19 to 21-year-olds and 17, 18-year-olds. We're 96, 97% in suitable accommodation, and our suitable neighbours are 80, mid-80s. So it really is impressive.
That's very good. Can I just be clear? I mean, I think I've got it right. I just want for the avoidance going down. We have 436 care leavers.
Yeah.
And that is on top of our 390 children
Yeah.
in care. So that's about 800 young people. That is a large number of people.
Yeah.
That's not children in need either, is it?
Sorry?
No, children in need and all the rest.
All
of
the-
it.
Yeah.
But
Child
the-
protection. No, that's not including any of it. No. But that is a large cohort,
Yeah.
436 care leavers, because there must be some young people who've got some difficulties
It's definitely,
in that.
definitely.
And they're young people in independent accommodation or semi-independent, getting their own flats.
We're pleased when they get their own flats, and we're trying to get ahead upstream of the offset changes to semi-independent units.
Yes.
So that's when we still have young people saying, I want to go to a semi-independent, we're trying to have the conversations that start to remove that as an option, because I think we've got until next October.
I think this October.
Is it this October?
I think it's 2023.
What,
Yeah.
they're changing criteria?
So you can't, so from October 2023, yes, we're in a new year.
Yeah, we're in the new year.
It's a brass man.
What do they do?
So Ofsted have already provided notifications to all DCSs and that they to children who are in semi-independent units, that the units must be regulated.
Oh,
So
right,
they've
that's good.
restructured, well,
This is,
it is, but it's created some market factors that they never anticipated. And that's a different conversation altogether.
Yeah.
So the semi-independent units must be regulated. And when Ofsted announced that for good reasons, the consultation with semi-independent providers haven't really understood the cost of registration. Because you can't just say this is a lovely room and you're registered with things that around a registered manager, responsible individual,
Like children's
specification, yeah, all of that needs to be followed, and that costs providers. Well, so yeah,
The providers will pass those costs on.
well, if they do it, they may try and, but they can't pass their costs on whilst they're unregulated.
Right.
They have to regulate, and then you see the steep. So we our demand projections, we have to take into account that.
Who's gonna be the regulator? Is it Ofsted or is it?
Be Ofsted.
Okay.
I hate to put more, impose more work, but would it be possible for us to have a briefing? We have to do some long report, but a briefing for the committee about that and what some of the implications are around this, because I know for me that whole issue about unregulated accommodation has been really, it's something really worrying about. And so it is really a good thing that's been regulated, but what the implications are in terms of the resources, in terms of what we need to do, would be something I think quite useful. What do you think, members?
Oh, I agree, because I also think if we know that's a problem, then is that something that needs to be built into our local plan for planning purposes
Budget.
and the budget? Like, should we as a council be looking to build units that we can then use? But we need the data first to make the case.
Yeah, be evidence, won't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So, Anne,
just to say that what we'll need to do is just make sure it's on our forward plan.
yes.
And then we can make sure that, time and capacity, because to do the other piece of work, to do, getting CAM's feedback is not.
No.
It's not, it's going to take some work to plan, to get engagement. And so we just need to make sure that it's on the forward plan, along with all the existing priorities that we've got. But there is a good news story there in terms of the budget. And can I say it again, that we have Hazelmere Road is open as our first residential unit.
It's finally open.
Yeah. Shall we hand over to?
Perhaps it would be a good thing for the committee to visit.
Yeah.
As all of us, that would be possible.
So we have to be careful now because it is literally a children's home.
Right.
So
Their home.
yes, so we'll need to work with the staff to be sure they're, that it's
When they're at school.
that sort of thing.
When they're at home.
Yeah.
And on the regulation thing though, even if it's just really basic initial subject to change projections, because I think the local plan is being decided some point this year, which is like what governs our planning priorities for the next 5 years or something.
Yeah.
And I think if we were able to make a case to the relevant cabinet members that there needs to be a commitment to perhaps, if it's possible, building units that will be dedicated to our care leavers, then now's the time to do it, is what I would just
Put that up the forward plan. Yeah.
Also, I did send through a couple of properties that came through for CPO.
Oh, interesting.
I've sent those to Anne and Ben. I mean, one was, I think, 5 bed up in Muswellville.
And
Doesn't come through very often, does it?
Councillor Brabson, Councillor Weston, you'll remember all the work about all the schools and all of that. Well, we now have extended that to children. We're putting together a plan for children in care, because we still want our mother and baby unit, and we've also got one for SEND.
Yeah.
So the school provision, so it's building quite rich. I think that on the plan to go forward is consideration of semi-independent.
Yes, that is for some of our 6 commissioning priorities under that sufficiency, the conversion of semi-independence.
Yeah. So just trying to think how we can weave that in, because it's existing work that we can weave in.
Well, perhaps, just thinking, I said, if we're going to keep an eye on this in committee, or, you know, on being briefed, if there's a briefing, just to perhaps have a section about how those things are linked. And I know I have said several times in any forum I have the opportunity, is that I think looking out for properties is really important for the property, strategic property team, because if we're serious about having in-borough provision, we need, probably that's why those two CPOs were just like, oh, they look really good. I hope something's happened with them, I don't know, but
We did follow that through and we weren't going to win those two.
it's not
It's a volatile and aggressive. I need to go back to toughen up my negotiations.
But yes, I mean, I think all these things hang together. But, you know, if we want to have in-house provision, we've got to have buildings to have it in.
Yeah.
So it's fairly obvious, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
But that'd be very interesting to think about. So have we asked all the questions we want to ask on the performance report? Yes, has everybody thought we've given this a good airing? Yeah, in which case we'll close that item. Thank you, Richard, and we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which I think is now corporate parenting strategy. And I think corporate parenting chairs, I think we could just join those two things out. We don't need not at all. Not at all. So Bev, over to you, I think. I think Anne just wants to
I
add.
just want to say, Richard, I think you're free to go. I think Councillor Brabazon sort of made it. Yeah. But you're quite welcome to stay, but.
So we agreed that we would have a verbal update of today's meeting, and I don't want the verbal update to kind of overshadow, but there's been quite a lot of work by everyone around the table has been involved in discussions between the last CPAC and today. So the presentation that we've delivered on the last occasion set out priority areas, and I think that we've got complete agreement on those priority areas should remain. And we took that we would go away and do work with our young people to come up with the first draft of corporate parenting strategy. So not in colour, but in black and white on the table, just as good as it's for the text. But first, this time it's not officers presenting, but it's officers giving and asking. So every lead member would like you to take a draft of the corporate parenting strategy. And it's only 32 pages, but we'd quite like you to make some time to read it and to give us your feedback. This is going to be the document that underpins the champion model. And it sets out what the role of corporate parenting is. So there's a message from young people around what they want us to be. It's the clues in the title. They want us to be the best corporate parents that we can be for them. And there's an art scheme there in an opening statement. Now, the governance arrangements is really the section that I need your comments at. The first 6 pages really just tells you what the service is doing, and it's an aid and a memoir for you to refer to. But from after that, when we get to the governance section, is the bit that I need your comments on.
Which page do we start?
There, put my glasses on. So it's I've got it. It's the final one. So it's the section that she says she has it, and she does. It's the section that talks about our priorities from page. If we go to page 26,
I think we're a different document. I think it is.
we photocopied things.
That's it, 27.
This only goes to page 10.
Oh no, well it's definitely 32 pages.
It's printed.
This one I've got, you've got it.
We've got one that is got everything.
It's got it.
Yeah, page 28.
I haven't. It's not,
I've got this.
not in this version, but it is so.
We'll make sure we get.
Don't worry.
So it's
Put it on the screen, I'll try.
So it talks about the strategy cycle, and the cycle on page 26 says something about the vision for all our young people, which we hope the document
Okay,
sets
number
out.
3.
Oh, right. So do you want
Do you
to
want
go to
me to-
page 26, please? Who's navigating? Is that you? Oh, wonderful. And I just want to acknowledge some of this is a piece of work that started when we talked about the Champions model, and we've just, you know, really tried to take as young people along with us. So that's the one, thank you. So there's a cycle that Anne has for her DNTs, and we just adopted that cycle so we could build in to how we report. And so the cycle works in this way, that we set out our vision. We talk about what we want children and young people to tell us against the vision. And the vision has been informed by children and young people, audit experience, what we've heard them say to us, what practitioners have told us. And then we shape that up in the Haringey approach, and that would be underpinned by the final version of what I hope will be the borough plan, and Stan's going to be signed off fairly soon. This informs our strategic corporate parenting outcomes, and I really would like to encourage us to have that to be goal orientated. This document means nothing if Yusuf and Stephen and Ali doesn't come to this meeting and say, as a result of us doing this work with you, this is what's changed for us. It's got to be goal orientated and impactful. And it goes on to talk about how through this structure and other structures that sit underneath delivers, has clear governance of scrutiny and accountability. And I know that Council Representative has already started the discussions with our colleagues from the scrutiny group to make sure that we built that into this cycle. So on page 28, if we skip 27, it's that section right to the very end that we really need your views on. I mean, your views are welcomed on all of it, but if you're really busy and you've got an hour on a Sunday and you want to just do this, I'd be ever so grateful. And I'd really like you to look at this before Corporate Parenting Champions, you come to your training on the 23rd of February. Okay. 23rd of February. Only one person nodded. That disheartened.
Does everyone have it in their calendar? I think that's the direct.
I think there's been some conversation about the date, and I don't think it's finalised yet.
Okay, thank you. The 23rd of February, that training will pull out, will make reference to this, and it will be delivered by myself and the corporate head of parenting and legal. And it's an hour and a half session and just takes you through the do's and don'ts. And then we follow through with your subject expert, advisor, and your care leaver, who will tell you from a child's perspective what's really going on housing, the health, and the areas that you can start asking questions about. We'll build that into the cycle as a vision, with the vision for each of those areas, and hopefully Council Representative will accept that that's how we report to her going forward. Yeah. And then in the forward plan, start pulling things by exception. That's how we thought it would be helpful to get some structure around corporate parenting. None of us can do this without your so invaluable. If we don't get your buy-in to help us to stay committed and focused, the checks and balances are needed for us to make the improvements we need to make. All of the 5 areas, the 4 areas that we've chosen are big tickets: transitional safeguarding, transitions, accommodation, health and wellbeing, and all the gambit of the NHS. These are real big areas, and we do need some external challenge thinking to ensure that we get it as polished as possible for children. And that's my presentation on this.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, go on.
I'm really excited about this. I think, like we're asking questions about this, we're asking questions about that. This is where you get the opportunity to really drill down and become masters of each of these sections, and you will be supported by officers and young people to really get underneath it all in a way that really can give you the ownership that I know that that you want. So I'm really excited about this model. Yeah.
Can I say a couple of things about this? I haven't seen this document. So, yeah, and in fact, I was reading when I was at bed, this is very good. It was a completely different document. So I haven't even had a skim of that before signed up. I think the issue of governance and accountability, I think governance and accountability is really important. I really put a lot of weight on it. And the question is, why would we be councillors if we don't? Because that's the whole point. We don't deliver the services. We're not the operational people.
Yeah.
We're the people who oversee, hold to account and so on. And it's even more important this year than any other year. It's always important, but we do know that Ofsted are going to be paying us a visit. And I think probably having, I did read the letter. I think it'd be sooner rather, I would imagine before the summer would be my best guess. I don't know, I'm not Anne no more than me. But I would say that we're in their window, that there's no doubt. And accountability is absolutely key. They may never come and talk to us, but the idea of having the ownership and the continuity. So there is one, we're now in January, soon going to be May, and if we get our teeth into this, I would hope that the members carry on, because it's really difficult if there's turnover of members. And I know there are people who really like this. It isn't everybody's cup of tea, but it is the most, even though it's not a glamorous committee, it's probably the most important job in council really, which is to make sure that we are parents to those 800 young people. It's a lot of people, isn't it? So I think this is a really good starting point, and we do need to discuss it. I don't know whether you want to move into the anybody got any questions for this bit before we move into talking about the champions.
Just this part, you want us to look at page 28 and 29?
So
28.
if you're very push, just from page 26 onward, but really we'd love your views, because it's a draft. We haven't published yet, and we didn't even send it to now, so we can find it on the website. Just because we really want you to kind of have, this is your document that we've drafted, and hopefully to build on. So just email it to us.
I can.
Yeah.
I think I've got something.
Emails everybody, so
Yeah, could you?
we've draft on it, draft not for publication, so that we all know we're not supposed to the rest of it. Any comments, Ahmed?
Yeah, I had a quick question on page 26, and correct me if I've misunderstood this, but I think just through my mind working and everything, wouldn't it make more sense to kind of ask the young people and children what they want from the strategy and then create our vision around that, rather than create our vision and then ask what children and young people tell us? It just seems a bit backwards to me.
You're completely right, and young people, although a small group, told us the vision, and that's set out in the first 3 pages of this document. So they just want us to be nice, to do the things we say.
Yeah, I guess it's just because, number one is us setting a vision, and number two is then ask them what they think about the vision, rather than, wouldn't it be easier for it to be number one, what they want the vision to be, and then we kind of gear it towards what they told us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And so I think I should play about with the language straight away to make that explicit.
Yeah.
Although you could have arrows going both ways, because it's actually an iterative process. It's an organic thing, and so you're going to be consulting all the time. So the arrows sort of.
You're going to mess with Bev's diagram. She'll be furious.
So this is really, it's been a long time coming. It's really important that we own this strategy, and so when we come to our next meeting at the end of February, we'll be, I hope, formally agreeing it. I think that would be an important thing to do. And now on the screen is the introductory bit for the document that I did read.
So we took some liberties, just sometimes when you work with people for a while, you can take some liberties with them that you wouldn't ordinarily take. And so just because particularly with the time we spent with Council Brevison and Council Weston, I hope you don't want to referring to you as well. We took just carving out a response to this letter from some of the things that young people wanted. Again, if any variations, that is warmly welcomed, but as officers, we thought that all of the leadership that we work with want to take responsibility, are passionate, want to deliver on their promises. And so you see we've shaped that into some words for you to consider.
Bev, I notice your name is missing.
That's right.
Okay, outside, I think.
About that, absolutely. We'll leave that to you. We'll leave that to all of you. Any more points about the strategy? Can I just have a skim through? Is there any one press, Esther? Do you?
To be honest, there's a typo, so it doesn't quite make sense. About it says children in care to Haringey.
Oh, yeah, thank you. That's well spotted.
Can I just say, Zena, before we move on?
Yeah.
And I think probably for newer members of the committee or people that haven't been involved quite so long as you and I have in this part of the council, but I think I can't overestimate the difference to know that when Ofsted's coming this time, we're looking at really good innovative work like this rather than worrying about whether our social work is safe. And I cannot begin to tell you how much of a change has happened over a number of years, and quite a number of years, to get to this point. So I hope everyone will take it seriously to the extent they're able to, because these are the things that will make Ofsted recognise the service as good. Whereas previously it's been, are we safe? And that's been our benchmark. And so there's been a tremendous transformation, and this kind of thing is the thing that means the council can be seen to be taking it seriously and is taking it seriously, and it moves things along again. So it's really significant that we've got to this. So really well done, everybody.
It is, and it is a sea change.
Yeah.
Because we have to be able to move beyond this.
Exactly.
We have to.
Yeah.
And this is the year, because they're turning up.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really lovely piece of work, just skimming it through.
It is draft.
Yes.
It's there to help but please don't put your stamp on it. But we think we've captured what we've been listening to.
Yeah. I thought the idea of the cinema club. Marsha said she was going to cry.
So we're going to go last part. The DCS, you will know that from the national media.
Hang on, you just talk about champions. Is that all right? Regarding the champions, I sent everybody an email about the areas. There are 4 areas, but we have more people, but I don't suppose it matters if people double up. Or how you want to do it.
Well, you know, they say in sales you should always have 3 deep, shouldn't you? Yes, I don't think.
So can you just say, so there's a training on the 23rd?
So training for the first training for the training, the core training for the champions model is on the 23rd of February. And that's the date that we've negotiated to ensure we have legal in the room. You will have the corporate parents in the form of Keith and myself, and we've invited Jude, Stephen and Sarah, the principal social worker. So they will all be there, so there's no full training is going to be delivered for about an hour and a half, come for break and we'll treat you really well in the evenings. And then questions and answers, and we want people to just, I think once you've had a chance to digest this document, it will give you really clear what questions you can put. We want you to feel really well supported and build trusting relationships and a psychologically safe place that the questions can be asked, because we believe your heart is to help us get to outstanding and pass the Ofsted exam.
Yeah. Brilliant. So that's February 23rd, and we'll all be there, I hope, and everybody be engaged. And this is a chance to move this on so that it isn't so theoretical, you know, sort of just paper-based and theoretical and all the rest of it, as you get more into some of the detail about how it all works. So now, sorry, Ben, I just thought we should do that. Over to you now first. So, this is the final item on the agenda, so it's an early night, definitely.
So Mark Riddell has he laid a challenge and he is planning to come back and talk to us about our thinking on the recommendations that you challenged us to consider.
He was the expert, came from the DfE.
We, through the London ADs, we threw a challenge back to Mark Riddell. Because in the local authorities he was visiting, there were a number of them, but some of the themes and patterns of the challenge was the same. And so he has supported various organisations to put together the whole council's approach strategy for care and calling it the Care Leavers London Covenant. So we've taken the liberty of signing Haringey up to that, and through NAS I will send out that covenant. It's not surprising that some of the 4 key areas that we identify as a leading Haringey are captured here, and what they want us to do is to now talk to care leavers, and Stephen and Jude will help us with that to see if this has had any impact on them. I would say it's a bit premature, but they're keen to just ensure, for the question to be put. So each champion will take their area, and we would like you to work with Jude and Stephen to design your surveys and send it out to our care leavers, because we would like to be in a position for the beginning of April to send them the feedback on the impact of us being signatories to the covenant. I think it's a good news story.
It is,
I think it's going to be.
Is that what the Hursley, am I to Hursley feedback that I'm getting lost here?
Oh, that's
This is-
different.
This is something different, right, sorry, and this is still quite, right, okay. I wanted to,
So the care leaver covenant will come out, and then in the second meeting that you're going to have with your subject expert and with your care leaver, that's what the immediate task we're going to ask you to design for the survey to design for your area. And I think it's a good start to your champions model, the champions role. My daughter, she finds me anywhere. Probably nasty.
blushing.
So, yeah, so it's a good start to the work that you're going to do on behalf of our care leavers particularly, and I think it also sets the temperature for some of your own insight into the things you need to know. And so that's the 2 pieces of work we're going to ask you to do immediately, and then with Keith, Sally, and others, we'll have to design a programme for how you the operational work that you'll do underneath to come back to these forums in our cycle and report back, and that is it.
That's brilliant. That's a fantastic piece of work. So we're all signed up, we've all got our instructions, and we'll be there on the 23rd. I don't know if it's in the calendar yet, with the timings, but
That's what I was going to ask.
So we've planned it to be in the evening. Because we know that people are,
it's because we've got the live dead.
I just sort of I suddenly looked at my diary and it's horrendous, and I'm going, how many meetings I can postpone them? Thank you.
it's in the evening.
Very happy.
So, and we will always try as best as possible to do it in the evening. The sun would be nice.
Okay. Excellent. So now we will move on to Hursley feedback, whatever.
So that's and it's a verbal feedback, and it's more drawing to your attention. Some of you may have read around the Hursley residential pool, and the National Review Panels has produced its first draft and interim report on the findings of what the allegations of complex abuse that's been suffered by children with complex disabilities in the group. We had 3 children placed with the Hursley group, and one of them has been confirmed to be in scope. So that the Doncaster is handling all of the media, so there has been no traffic to Haringey, but it was right that I come to this meeting and just draw to your attention. We have prepared a report on our findings, having visited all of the children, who are placed out of borough in with complex needs. And that report, by and large, is a positive one. Because when this broke last year, our social workers went and stayed with their children until we could move them closer to home, the ones that we were most worried about. But it is something that has, it is a worry, but actually the impact on Haringey children has been minimal. And that the system does need to change. And so some of the immediate changes to the system is that our quality assurance measures ensure that we are in contact with the LADOs, that we are now asking for the regulation 44 visitor service reports. The law changed and we couldn't. It didn't come to you automatically, you had to formally request it. Now we have made that formal request for all of our children. Hayley and Keith are in the room, and the placement panel meetings come up front and centre, particularly to ensure that we are following our out of borough placements regime. And I think that the point in the data report around visits, I'm pleased to say that the drop in the visits aren't to do with children with complex care needs, because that's a non-negotiable. They must be seen, and they must be seen regularly. And
could you give us a couple of, just a brief example of what complex care need might be, if we're not familiar?
so children with profound learning difficulties, with limited speech and communication difficulties. Some of them have children with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. Some of them are low functioning with neurodiversity disorders.
One of the things when you said the things that made challenges, that's came to me. So I wasn't meaning to be flip, I just couldn't think what it was, but it did come back to me. One of the things about this that occurs to me would be useful is perhaps some verbal, it could be verbal, don't mind, but the changes that have gone underway in children's commissioning, I think, are quite relevant information for this committee, because I think it's been strengthened as commissioning has moved from the adult formal commissioning into children specifically. And when you think of what Bev has just been talking about, so much of that is linked to commissioning arrangements. I think it would be quite helpful that we had an overview strengthened it, because that is what we need to be sure has happened.
So in a succinct, just top of my head, colleagues, rightly so, Councillor Brabazon, your ask of us was,
I'm always asking you about commissioning.
We were able to, once Charlotte, we had a strategic commissioner. Everyone will remember Charlotte. She covered children's and adults, and she did a lot of great work. However, certainly for children's, there was more capacity that we needed. And so when she left, we were fortunate to be able to have agreement to have our own commissioning AD. And also we put in a growth bid, and we got a pot of money to strengthen the capacity underneath her and have a different level of focus. One of them being the placements team that used to sit in the old commissioning regime has now moved over to sits with you. Sits with Keith and his team, so that there's a closeness and there's just no sending emails and waiting a couple of days, or and all of that. It's in real time ownership, knowing the children, knowing the young people, knowing the resource and the capacity and the need. So that was another thing. Coming back to the commissioning side, we have an AD, Caroline Brain, who is magnificent, totally magnificent. And she organisation and clarity is who she is. And yeah, she does. And she says to me, Anne, I can sort all this, and it's good. This is to chunk. That's when you'll get it. And I say, yes. Caroline, can I have that, please? And we'll chunk. And she's right. Because actually, to do depth and quality and sustainable work, that's what you need. So, we made reference earlier to the commissioning programmes for children, social care. She's still developing it, but there will be a subgroup that Bev chairs that looks at all the capital and the programmes and the projects. There'll be the similar one for Jackie, who's online, and there'll be another one for Nick Hewlett and his replacement, Jane Edwards. In the meantime, some of you would have heard about Safety Valve. It's going to deliver a whole service change for us, and at the same time going to reduce the cost of the service by 50 million, which is kind of really shaky. We couldn't do it without Caroline and Jackie having a very rigorous and detailed and genuine set of programs. So you know, sometimes people are saying we're doing this, we're doing that, it's going to give you that, and you know, it doesn't that look nice? No, there's detail behind everything that they're doing with the support of finance. So the commissioning unit is in a place where it can deliver that level of product really that helps us move forward.
I think that's incredibly helpful, Anne, and to the overview. And just to summarise on Anne's summary, it seems to me we've just been talking in the strategy about governance and accountability. And when you hear what happened with that private group, that's where having strong commissioning and having that strong monitoring and that accountability, all of those things hang together, seems to me. And so there are lessons to be learned from that. And I think we are taking those very seriously to heart. And on behalf of the community, so robust, because if we are commissioning, you have to be on top of it. Then you have to be absolutely clear on what you're buying and what you're monitoring it. So that was really helpful, Anne. And I want people to feel confident that we are on top of it, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail that I haven't given. So I was really pleased to hear today that we're doing best value reviews. So we have a placement, somebody will go out and go through this is what we asked for, are we getting it? And is it, you know, I mean, simple things that we haven't had the time to do, you know, like if a young person is in a unit and they go missing, because they do, and we paid for 2 to 1, you have to ask the question, how did they get to go missing? But that's another story. But anyway, when they are missing, if they're missing for a week, why are we paying for 2 to 1 for that week? So that's the level of detail they can, that's the level of detail they can get to. We just didn't have the capacity before. We were just pleased that we got a placement before.
I think that's a very, very, very positive note. Is there any questions anybody wants to ask about that verbal report? Okay, any other business anybody wants to raise? If not, you get to go home at 8:20.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You keep that. I'm going into work on.
I think personally, it's much better having a meeting.
All right, great.
Matches.